I couldn't tell in the room. I assume Lisa is there.
Yeah, I see her.
I'll how about if we welcome her to the front of the room and make sure she's mic'd. She doesn't have charts today, and she's going to talk to us about her career in the federal government, as well as her passion, which is in this area of STEM. No surprise there. So I'll give you a little bit of a background, and then she'll fill in with all the details. In October of 2020, Lisa joined NASA Langley as our center's associate director. And in that role, she serves as the chief operating officer, managing day-to-day operations of our now $1 billion research and development portfolio. She's responsible for aligning Langley's institutional resources and infrastructure to meet current and future NASA mission needs. She has over 30 years of experience in the U.S. federal government, serving in a variety of progressively responsible managerial and policymaking positions. Lisa's held leadership roles at both the agency and now the center level. Her prior responsibilities included oversight of NASA's $3 billion mission support portfolio, including human capital, procurement, protective services, and infrastructure. She provided executive leadership and oversight for the NASA's Office of the Chief Financial Officer, directing financial policy, reporting, management, and internal control activities across the agency's $24 billion portfolio. She was director for financial policy and operations for the General Services Administration prior to that. Lisa is a graduate from our local Christopher Newport College and has a degree in accounting and is a member of the AGA and the AGA Council for the Advancement of Women. Welcome, Lisa.
All right, thank you, Vicki. Thank you, everybody. Can you just make sure you can hear me online? I'm assuming this is all working.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. First of all, happy Pi Day, right? March 14th. So I have a moon pie for the individual who was most recently retired. Who might that be? Who has the least amount of time between federal service and being retired? I know George retired recently. I don't know if somebody has you beat. Okay. Okay. What time of day? I will let you fight over this moon pie. How's that? Yeah, we've got folks walking all over the center day handing out moon pies for Pi Day. So anyway, it's a pleasure to come chat with you all today. Vicki did a really good job of going through my bio, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over that. I'd rather spend a little bit of time talking about kind of what's cooking in the agency and the center here, and the kind of things that we are focused on as an agency and center leadership team. But to give you a little bit more background, I come from a military family. My father was a pilot in the United States Air Force. He immigrated to this country when he was 9 years old. His family immigrated from Poland. And so I am actually first generation born in this country on my father's side. And so they came and were farmers in the state of Illinois. And so I guess that's where I get my kind of green thumb from. I really enjoy gardening and that kind of outdoor activity. My grandmother on my father's side was a phenomenal cook and baker. And so that's my other passion, is I really enjoy baking and cooking. From the kind of work I do, I don't see immediate results every day. So when I cook or bake and work in the yard, there's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. I can obviously, I have instant kind of feedback that, yeah, that was great, or maybe that didn't turn out so great. So, so that's kind of one outlet that I get to follow. As Vicki said, I did graduate from Christopher Newport College before it got university standing with a degree in accounting. And my path mostly in my career was in NASA, in the finance or budget or financial systems arena. I was fortunate, I guess you could say, to be part of the team that implemented our new enterprise financial solution, SAP, believe it or not, over 20 years ago. And that system is ending near of life. So it's like a blast from the past. We're going to have to go through another major effort to upgrade our enterprise financial system. So we are kicking that activity off. And so we're looking forward to that, which also includes some procurement functionality, some HR functionality. So through the years, we have expanded our solution set for enterprise business systems. So that's an activity we'll be kicking off. As Vicki mentioned, I also went to GSA for about a year. I felt like I had been in NASA for quite a few years. It was time to see a different part of the federal government. And I wanted to go to an agency that was more of kind of a provider of services, if you will. And so I did spend a little bit of time there before another phenomenal opportunity opened up at NASA. And that's where I landed in the OCFO organization at the agency level at NASA headquarters. Spent about 10 years up there, and I said, had enough of the DC life. And so was fortunate enough when Clayton Turner extended an invitation for me to come back home here to NASA Langley, and been here about two and a half years in my current role. So it's been quite a career. We'll have 35 years next month in the federal government. So I've been very blessed with the opportunities I've been given along the way. I've had many good coaches and mentors. Probably my most, I would say, mentor and coach that pressed me the most was Ken Winter. And so when we heard the news that he had passed last week, that really kind of, put in stark relief for me the opportunities we have and the opportunity to give back. And so, as Vicki said, part of my passion now is to kind of pay it forward in the STEM field. I don't come from a STEM field, but as we talk to high school students, college students, we do communicate that STEM is not the only path into a technical organization such as NASA. I and some of you in the room and on the line didn't have a traditional science or technology or engineering or mathematics background, as nor did I. And so we do convey that it's okay, right? You can still work in this agency and be part of the team doing phenomenal work, but not have that traditional STEM background. And that is also part of my other kind of passion is on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Inclusion is now the 5th core value in NASA. The 4 prior were safety, integrity, teamwork, and excellence. So now we've added inclusion as a core value in the agency. And so I think these go together, STEM and DEIA, right? So in order to attract a diverse and inclusive workforce and giving them access and making sure we're equitable in how we hire and recruit and retain, the STEM pipeline is hugely important as we go to making sure our workforce is representative of the nation at large. One of the things that's really helping us do that is, as you're seeing today, we're able to do things in a virtual and hybrid environment. With COVID, we were still able to recruit our interns in a virtual environment. We were actually able to reach interns that we would not have had in the past. A lot of our interns came from the local area, did not have to commute or pay to come here. Unfortunately, our internships are largely unpaid. And so we give them experience. And with partnership with VAST, we are able to, I think, give them some lodging and a small stipend. But our expertise is the mentors and the coachers. We partner with our interns, and of course, the facilities and capabilities we have here at NASA Langley. So through the pandemic, we were able to recruit from all over the nation, from the state of Alaska, in fact. And so that has really opened the aperture for how we attract again, a workforce that is representative of our nation and not just necessarily in this local area. And we actually, that's one of the things that as an agency and a center, we're still frankly struggling with, is how do we do this in a virtual or a hybrid environment? How do we keep people connected to the mission when they may work in California or they may work in North Carolina and aren't here day to day, as many of you were? And when I started my career, right, I was here on site 5 days a week, and my team members were here on site 5 days a week. That is not the environment we're working in, nor I think we will be working in the future. And so we are still struggling with, how do we do that in an inclusive way so that people don't feel like, well, I'm in California, I'm really not part of the team. I'm not interacting with my team in person. And so obviously technology is a huge aspect of making that happen. Technology is not perfect. And so we are struggling with, for large or small or medium groups for that matter, how do we make that experience for the people in the room just like they're included with the people on the other end of the camera or the other end of the computer. So we're still challenged with that. You all are using Zoom today, I understand. NASA, we do not allow Zoom client to be installed on our NASA provided assets. We have to access Zoom through the browser. There is limited functionality with that. So even as the rest of the world has certain tools, in NASA, we don't always get to play like everybody else does with those tools. So again, we're having to learn all of this, and how do we collaborate with our external partners in a way that allows us to get the mission done, even understanding we have some limitations. So one of the things the agency is doing right now is experimenting with Office 365, which is our emailing platform and our collaboration platform. We are experimenting with opening that up to external partners. We just piloted that with the Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, out in California. I believe that went really well. So now we are looking to open that aperture on Office 365, again, a native tool that we use in NASA, and hopefully expanding that tool to some of our external partners. That has been a criticism of a lot of our partners, is NASA's kind of locked down with how we collaborate and who we collaborate with. So we've heard that message, and we are trying to expand that aperture. So that is one thing we are doing, not only with our internal workforce, but our partners as well. Some of the other things we're working on is our infrastructure. Hopefully you all are seeing some of the very positive progress we are making here at NASA Langley with some of the new buildings that we are constructing, some of them not so new anymore. I think this building we're in today is about 10 years old. But we've had 2 other new buildings, the one right across the way, the Measurement Systems Lab, we opened up last year. And so excited to see that coming online. And then on Langley Boulevard, if you go far enough, you'll see the new construction of the new wind tunnel that will replace the vertical spin tunnel. It'll be the Flight Dynamics Research Facility, first wind tunnel constructed in over 40 years. And so we are, as an agency and as a center, recognizing that our infrastructure is aged, it is costly, and does not necessarily meet our mission needs when we need them if the facilities aren't maintained at the level that we require. So the agency is looking at an agency master plan for our facilities. So it's not just every center coming forward with what we believe our infrastructure needs to look like for now and into the future, but looking holistically across the agency. So if we have repetitive or duplicative capabilities, like ArcJet or some of the testing facilities, we are taking a look at what is the best way to optimize our resources. So we are coming together early next month, as a matter of fact, to start looking at those capabilities and say, do we maintain them? Do we sustain them? Do we get rid of them? Do we outgrant them? Meaning, do we make them available for outside partners to come in and use and maintain? Or do we just divest of them? Meaning we demo it, right? Me personally, it'll be great if we make a decision and stick to that decision, right? We don't tend to do that very well in this agency. Unitary Plan Wind Tunnel is a prime example of that, right? That decision was made over a decade ago to demo that facility. It is now off the demo list. There is high demand for that capability. So that facility will remain as long as we have high mission need. And so that is also a change, I think, in how the agency is looking at, through the lens of those capabilities. It's what does the mission need? Sometimes it's hard for the mission directorates to project what those needs are. And so that is kind of the dilemma we're in as well, right? The centers need, what is that mission demand? What does that look like? And sometimes it's hard for the missions to come forward with that, especially as we move in the Moon to Mars program. Mars is obviously going through an architecture concept review. And so until those decisions are made, the mission directorates involved in that, Science Mission Directorate, Human Exploration, Space Technology, they're then not going to be able to turn that into guidance to the centers, not only from a facility standpoint, but from a workforce perspective. So we are, actively engaged in those conversations and await that guidance coming out. One of the other things that is kind of all consuming right now is it's budget season. Many of you may remember that in the spring, we formulate our budget looking forward to FY25. So we're in FY23, right? We got an enacted budget earlier this year. The president's budget for FY24 just rolled out. It is a positive sign for the agency's top line. So now we're looking at all of that and formulating our FY25 budget. Again, a lot of unknowns out there, and so we're doing the best we can to put a budget forward, again, that is responsive to meeting our mission needs, understanding we have workforce challenges, we have infrastructure challenges, we have inflation challenges. Everywhere we all go, there is not a single walk of life where we can't turn and see price increasing, right? The grocery store, the gas pump, travel, any service, right? And so we are not immune to that. So as our contracts come forward for recompete or renewal, we're seeing significant escalation in our contract pricing, our pay raises in the federal government. Good news is they are going up. The bad news is they are not funded. And so we've heard the term unfunded mandates. This comes, we fund that within the budget we are given. We are typically not given additional money to fund pay raises. And so dealing with all of those challenges is an opportunity to look at, well, how do we do things more efficiently and more effectively? You may know that on the mission support side, we went through over the last several years a mission support architecture program map. And so we looked at bringing a lot of these mission support capabilities into an enterprise business model. Whereas before, those decisions and those dollars and the workforce were under the purview of the center. Most of that is now under the purview of the enterprise. So as an example, the procurement function. We used to own the budget for all of the procurement professionals and their contracts. Now that function is managed at headquarters in the Office of Procurement. So those individuals, that salary resides there, their guidance, the policy, all of that is now at the enterprise level. And the centers are now receivers of those services in a different way than we were in the past. And so the theory is by doing an enterprise model, we become more efficient and more effective. In some cases, we have seen that. In other cases, it's taking us a little bit longer to see the fruits of those efforts. It is a challenge for us as receivers of those services in a new way to understand that I can't make certain decisions that I would have been able to make in the past, especially when we have, budget challenges. We used to be able to, make those decisions and trade spaces at the local level. We do not have that flexibility now. That's handled at the enterprise level. So that's a huge change that we are experiencing here locally. And so, with all of that, I think it comes back to kind of the STEM and the DEIA. With all of these changes, how do we keep our workforce engaged? How do we keep them focused on the mission? And frankly, if we don't do, the work with STEM and recruiting in these fields, and we don't attract the best and the brightest from all walks of life, from all portions of the country, then our mission will not be successful, right? One of the things from a safety perspective at the agency leadership level, we talk a lot about, the lessons learned from, frankly, Challenger and Columbia, right? We want to make sure that everybody has a voice, everybody is listened to. Doesn't mean everybody's voice is going to drive a decision one way or another, but we want to make sure that we don't have what we call, and I'm not going to get the phrase right, but that we are comfortable with, deviations from plan, right? And that we have people constantly speaking up and saying, hey, something doesn't look right, something doesn't, read right to me. And so that is always at the forefront of what we are attempting to do as a leadership team. As a senior leadership team at the agency, we actually have a monthly safety focus. And so we make sure these messages are continually to be shared with the leadership team and then, spread throughout the organization. And so those are some of the things that we're focusing on. Happy to take any questions. I kind of went around and about, just trying to give you a sense of what's happening. The other thing I think is positive, you see the cafeteria is open. We are looking at different business models for bringing some services on site. Through COVID, obviously the exchange was shut down. We are trying to bring those services back on site with a different model. Instead of the old model with the exchange running the cafeteria, we have independent vendors in here, offering different, food options. Similar model with our child care development center. We have a private vendor that is running that now. The exchange is more of an oversight function, kind of overseeing a contract, if you will, instead of those actually being employees of the exchange. So we are trying different business models as we bring these services back on. And Afterburners has finally opened 2 nights, 2 afternoons a week. So that was a huge demand from our workforce. And so as we feel like we get the on-site presence, Wednesdays and Thursdays seem to be about the high point of our on-site presence. We're able to bring some of these services back online to improve the work experience for the workforce. And it also allows them to connect with one another. Again, we talked about the virtual hybrid challenges, bringing people on site for what we call community events, community opportunities. We feel like what the exchange can offer is a big part of that, giving those venues and that space to just reconnect and kind of catch up and network with folks. So happy to take any questions. If there's something I didn't talk about, you thought you would hear, or, just, hey, have you thought about this? Or that sounds really crazy. So, yes, Melvin.
Should I? And I need to tell my name. I'm Melvin Fairby. Lisa, thank you for your insights. I wanted to poke at the DEIA for a second. You mentioned the center is having success in recruiting interns from across the country. I'm assuming that's persons of color as well as women?
Yes.
So has the center seen any success in converting these interns into term and perm hires, or is it just an intern thing?
We are moving the needle slightly.
Okay.
Right. That is part of the conversation we have. We look at the data and the information and see how that comports with the efforts that we have in place from a recruiting and, getting the word out perspective. We are not seeing those results, I think, at the pace I personally would like to see. So even though we are, reaching interns, to your point, our ability to then bring them not from an intern perspective, but from either a term or a perm part of the workforce, still continues to be a challenge. And so we are actually looking at some very targeted activities. When we did a current state assessment of our DEI activities last year, one of the highlights was our recruiting retention practices. And so even though on the intern side, we're seeing some success, when we actually do those hiring actions and we're not seeing any changes, what about that recruiting and hiring process do we need to unpack a little bit further, right? So are we reaching out to underserved communities, HBCUs, MSIs, for instance? And you know, we are trying to double down on those efforts. Again, some of that takes money, you know, talked about the constrained budget. So a lot of this is done, you know, people, you know, they step away from their day job and they go out and recruit at certain events. We're trying to get better to do almost on-site recruiting. We can't compete like the direct or the private sector, but we can say, hey, here's some vacancies that are available. Let me walk you through the application process, right? And kind of, you know, hold their hand through that. It's not easy. I wish it were much easier. I wish we didn't go through the process we have. Maybe someday we will. But we are trying to do more of those kind of almost near term, you know, real time recruiting efforts, and getting out. And like I say, that is all of us, right, to do that. And it's not just, you know, the Office of STEM Engagement or ODEO doing that, right? We are really tapping into every employee at this center has a role in recruiting, you know, the talent across the nation. But it's a good question, Melvin. We are not seeing those results quite yet, like I would have thought we'd see.
Thank you.
Yes. Your face
Yeah.
is familiar.
Dave Jones.
Hey, Dave.
Anyway, yeah, another personnel related question. Kind of during COVID and post, what's the center's turnover rate looking like compared to historical?
Yeah, so during COVID, it went way down, just because where were people going to go work, right? After COVID, I would say in 2020, no, what were we, 21, 22, we saw a slight uptick in turnover to about 7% here at Langley. We're back down about 3 or 4%, which is our typical turnover rate, traditional. So we did see a little bit of spike after COVID, but we are back down to kind of where we see our normal turnover rate. Yes, it's Dan, correct?
Howdy, this is Dan. A couple of years ago, I had some meetings with folks in the executive office, and there was conversations leading to this idea of a temporary workforce.
Yes.
Is that still moving forward?
Yes. And when you say temporary workforce, I interpret that to mean our term appointments, meaning they're not permanent civil servants. They are hired for a set period of time for a specific task. That is still very much a model that we are pursuing and following every day. The agency is still looking at a reduction in our permanent FTE civil servant workforce by 2025. I think there is like a 10% reduction in our permanent civil service hiring. That doesn't mean that we are not hiring, right? We are just deciding what type of work is best suited for a permanent hire versus a temporary or term hire. And then depending on what that work is, will then determine the length of the term. For some, I think of our STEM fields, we just got authority to expand the term appointments to 10 years.
10 years.
Right? Prior to that, I think it was either 4 or 6 years was the max a term. But typically, what I see is we hire, let's say, a 2 or a 4 year term, and then we will extend that term to the maximum that OPM allows us to extend. What will be interesting to me, I've seen this before, right? You've been in the agency long enough, the pendulum swings a few times, where in an organization, we hired several terms to help us through a particular project. Well, those terms are still working. We converted them to perms. And so it will be interesting to me to see if the logic behind that model works, or do we just say, oh, we're going to convert them to perms as those perm vacancies or those perm allocations allow us to. So I think it makes sense when you have work of a temporary nature, right? It is not, I hire Lisa and, she's going to have a career in the civil service, right? I hire Lisa because I have a very specific project for her to complete. And I know that going in. And so is that a model that I want to pursue as an individual? We do hear there are challenges with that. A lot of folks don't want a term appointment. Some of our younger folks do, right? They don't want a 30-year career with the same employer. Although I will say, even though I've been with NASA almost my entire career, I felt like I've had many jobs along the way. It's not like I was in the same job my entire career. So I've been very blessed in that regard. And that's one of the things that I coach and mentor young individuals is, hey, don't be afraid to move around, right? Actually, we want breadth of experience and expertise, especially as people ascend into leadership roles in their careers. So it is a thing, Dan. A very long answer to your question. And we are still, that is still part of our strategy moving forward, is we will have that balanced workforce, perms as well as our contractors.
Yeah. Thank you. I hadn't heard much about it since.
Yeah, no, we are still moving forward on that. Yeah.
I'm going to have to let people know that the podium laptop went to sleep, and those folks who are remote have audio. They don't have video. Okay.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. I guess I didn't.
Oh, well,
wave
no,
my
it's
wand
not your
enough.
fault. We never had this situation before.
Okay.
So there
My
you go.
apologies.
So those people in the remote world, Rick Ross will take your questions and let me know if you posted any questions to chat or if you have a question. And so I'm going to have to ask Rick this point, does anybody out there in remote land have a question for Lisa?
Nothing's been posted in the chat so far.
And I think George had his hand up, and there was one over on this side of the room too, if there's nothing.
Yeah, well, we'll get back
Online.
here, but
Yeah.
there's
Online
nobody
first?
out. I mean,
Okay.
there's 20 people remote, but we kind of lost track of them.
Lisa,
Okay, so back.
I'd like to
That's
ask
the
you.
challenge of a hybrid environment, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I didn't expect, I shrank the Zoom window. So it said, oh, we don't need the screen anymore. And so it put the screen to sleep, which killed the video camera.
Yeah.
And, you
We're
know.
all still learning.
Hey, hi,
Yeah,
this,
and now it won't come up because Melanie has to log back in, and I don't want to close that down. So any other
All right.
questions locally?
yeah,
You mentioned Zoom
Yeah.
and being limited because NASA's not allowed to use Zoom, but NASA uses Teams.
Yes.
And quite frankly, it works much better than Zoom does.
Yeah, I'm sorry for all the
worries.
confusion, but to compensate for that, we have this Langley Alumni Association
excellent.
mug,
Yay.
so you can
Okay.
remember your time with us
Yay. Thank
for a long time.
Someday I will be one of you. I have high hopes.
Someday all this will be yours, yeah. Yeah, and you got Jeff Tennille. See, this is my responsibility, right? But I always forget to bring it, and Jeff
Thank you.
brought it, so there
Okay,
you go.
Thank you.
All
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Sherry. That was very interesting. Thank you very much.